All right, Gary, welcome to the Be the One podcast.
Thank you.
You are our first one in our brand new studio.
Looks fantastic.
So we're just so thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay, so tell me a little bit. We're going to talk about the upper school today. Mm-hmm. You are the head of the upper school. Mm-hmm. And so we just want to hear more about life in the upper school, but also kind of what brought you here and what you love about working with high school students.
Sure.
And all the things.
What brought me here, I think we'll start with that because life in the upper school changes every day. So it depends when you ask me. What brought me to the U.S., so obviously I'm from South Africa.
Yes, not from Georgia.
From Georgia, further south. And my parents have always been in education. I grew up in an educational household. Okay. But I came over to the U.S. on a tennis scholarship. I played at CSU. I had an option to stay in South Africa and play rugby or come over to the U.S. and play tennis.
Oh, wow.
So came over to the U.S., played tennis for 4 years. Initial plan was to work for a year or two, save up some money and go back to South Africa. Happened to meet my wife my senior year in college, and she ruined those plans. 20-something years later, here I am. She's held me hostage since. But so fast forwarding a little bit, I started off my first probably 2 years in the US working corporate. Okay. I was working in the computer information systems world, and Eva was just born. I was working night shift in the network operating center. April was working for UBS Financial during the day. So I would work night shift, come home to Eva during the day, and then go back to night shift. So that schedule just wasn't working. Yeah. So we were looking at options at the time, and a friend of mine was working at a boarding school in Atlanta. I'd grown up in a boarding school environment in South Africa, which is a little different than the boarding schools here in the US, but my parents are actually still in charge of a boarding program. We call it a hostel in South Africa. And so we decided to look at that as an option. So I jumped into the education world, really went into administration first, which is kind of going backwards. Did that for 2 years, ran the boarding program at a school in Atlanta, and then decided we wanted to make education sort of a career. I moved from there to another school and went to teaching. So at that point, I decided, okay, I want to be in education, need to go and actually be in education for a while. So taught for 2 years, in lower school, teaching computers and typing of all things. I don't know how to type. And then they opened up a high school. So I created the technology curriculum for Mount Vernon Presbyterian.
Oh, awesome.
And eventually, obviously coached tennis and soccer. And we ended up staying there for 7 years. So I was 7 years in the classroom, ended up teaching social studies as well. I think partly because I've got an accent and they thought he knows about the world. He's going to teach world geography. So I taught world geography for 4 years. Moved over from there back into sort of an administrative role at the Pine School in Florida, while still teaching. And fast forward, we went from there to Orlando, and then back to Columbus. Initially, initially it's crazy. Initially, when this opened up, April was, there's no ways I'm moving back to Columbus because she grew up here.
Yes.
Her parents still live here. We came for a visit when I brought the family for graduation. And after graduation, she looked at me and said, we've got to do it. So,
and we're so glad.
And it's been great. It's been absolutely fantastic. But that's in a nutshell how I ended up back in Columbus. In Columbus and back in Columbus of all places.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it like working with high schoolers? I mean,
it's an adventure.
I was going to say, what exact word would you choose?
Yeah, an adventure. And I think that's such a positive word to say because I love it. I am generally a bit of a risk taker, so I love being able to have adultish conversations with high school students. Yes. And watching them grow from 9th grade through 12th grade. I think, that transition from when they're coming out of middle school, which is the years of confusion in all aspects, and trying to find themselves in high school,
right.
And helping guide them through that process. I love that process. I love the interactions with them. I love as they get older especially, they start being a little more comfortable coming to get candy in my office. You got to bribe people to come into the principal's office.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
Absolutely. So that part, I think, working with the high school students, it really is just an everyday adventure because there is that growth and maturity that you can have mature conversations with them while still having fun. Right. And it keeps me young.
Right.
Too.
Well, and that's one thing I love about Brookstone is that it is a good balance between,
Absolutely.
all the academics, all the things that you need to prepare them for the next level, but also making it fun.
Yep.
Because if it's not fun, then everybody's miserable.
Well, and that's the challenge too, because you have sometimes too much fun, and you say, well, you're not focusing too much on academics.
True. Yes.
Too much on academics, and it's not fun.
Right.
So
it's a balance.
It is, and I think that's where the teachers at Brookstone do an absolutely phenomenal job. They balance. They make my job easy. They balance the learning and fun perfectly. Are we perfect? Do we always get it right? No.
Right. No.
And I think that's probably one of the challenges of being in education in general. Is I think it's the one profession that you are always potentially critiqued on.
Yes.
In the upper school, we have 320, 330 odd students. And the chances of everyone being happy every day is not possible.
Right.
So, but it's a continuous challenge to make sure that we're doing what's best for the student and not necessarily what's best, what everyone else thinks is best in that moment.
Right.
So yeah,
totally agree.
Yeah.
And it is so student focused and it is so individualized. And I tell people this all the time. You really, there's so many eyes on your kids. And, of course, it's not a perfect place. There is no such thing as a perfect school.
Absolutely.
But boy, our kids are our students are surrounded by people who are doing everything they can to make it the best environment for them.
And good people. I
Wonderful
think
people, yes.
having now my daughter's in third grade. I've got a son in seventh grade, and obviously one that's graduated. And this kind of jumps into, the fun part about being at Brookstone as well. Just from purely a family standpoint, I don't have to worry. I probably should worry, but I don't worry about where my third grader is in the afternoon if I don't see her.
Right.
They get to come with me in the mornings.
Right.
I am completely comfortable letting them walk across campus on their own.
Yes.
Yes, I probably should be a little more cognizant of where they are, but because we have so many good people on campus that I know there's always going to be someone looking out for her.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is one of the biggest assets that Brookstone has. We really are a family in that sense.
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
And it is a safe place. Our kids feel safe
Without a
here.
doubt.
Our kids feel ownership here.
Yep.
They feel very comfortable to walk around and to make themselves at home.
Absolutely.
And that's a blessing. And it is a blessing being here with your kids. Like
It is.
I love being able to see my own kids.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's just, it's the best.
Well, and that would be for us as a family, a why Brookstone piece as well. I mean, there's so many, even from academics to various things. But from a family perspective, being able to take part and be part of their lives is definitely a bonus.
Yeah.
We don't get to miss a play that a third grade student's doing. And the teachers know that too. If they have something, there's a number of teachers covering their classes so they can go watch their child take part or even just another student that they want to go watch.
Right.
So yeah, it is absolutely a family.
Right.
And that family doesn't mean everything goes well always either.
Of course not. Of course not. But and you bring up something. I love it watching on email when somebody's like, I need somebody to cover my class. I mean, the way people jump in to help each other around here, it's just awesome.
Well, I think it speaks to a bigger, oftentimes we get asked, okay, why the tuition? Why pay the tuition to come to Brookstone? Why Brookstone? Why independent school? And so many of those things are tough to sort of put down on paper, the intangibles, because the intangibles are the why, and you can't really experience the why until you're here. Little things like that, if I talk to public school teachers that have been at Brookstone now for a year or two, that's the first thing they notice is when they need to run to a doctor's appointment or go get a sick child or whatever it may be, one email and within 5 minutes that class is covered and no one asks questions and it just happens. And things that we kind of take for granted. I think is really special about this place.
I totally agree. Okay, so looking at the daily schedule, what is a typical, if there is such a thing, typical day for an upper school student?
Depends on the student. So some students show up at 7:30 and they hang out in the rotunda and they just get to have some downtime, or they go get some extra help academically. Some student comes into the parking lot on 2 wheels at 7:59 into the back door. So yes, at the start of the day, that 7:30 to 8 is just, it's a myriad of experiences. Who knows? But really, then we go to homeroom. All the students, that's kind of everyone gets centered. We, in homeroom, 8 to 8:05, taking attendance, just touching base. And I think that's an important part of the day. We changed the schedule a couple of years ago 4 years ago now, to make sure that every single morning there is a touch point with the homeroom teacher.
Right.
And it's the homeroom teacher that stays with each child for those children for 4 years, or 4 years.
I love that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even if it is, yes, we're taking attendance, we're checking uniforms, but more so it's just a quick touch point to say, how you doing?
Right.
Anything that they need to know. And then we get made aware of any situations we may need to be aware of.
Right.
Then the day starts. And then obviously we get into just the regular rotation of classes. And we do the rotating schedule on purpose. I mean, it's intentional because, having math after lunch every day is not ideal. You want to sleep after lunch.
Right.
Having the same class at the end of the day, obviously, is not ideal for sports early dismissals. So you're not missing the same class every day.
Right.
But then obviously we go through the couple periods. We have a break time. And I love the fact that Brookstone focuses on old school recess.
Yes.
It really is recess. It's the kids are outside. I think the play is just as important. Playground, shenanigans are just as important as what happens in the classroom.
Right.
They have to figure that stuff out. And I love that we focus on that. So we have a 15 to 20 minute break time in the middle of the day. Then we have program time, which is intentional. It depends on the day, but it could be an assembly. It could be advisory. It could be course scheduling. It could just be study time, just to have some extra free time.
Right.
And then we go into lunch, and usually, again, what I love about the upper school in Brookstone is you don't have to wait in the cafeteria until everyone's eaten. You can grab and go. You can stay there. You can go eat in the garden.
Right.
So really, you have another 40 to 45 minute free time, which obviously includes lunch. And then we end off with 2 academic periods, and then office hours, and then we go to sport.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
And all those things that they are intangible, but the importance of break, the importance of that freedom that our students feel, they always comment on that, especially students coming in from other schools, really remark on the trust that their teachers have in them, that they are able to walk across campus to the lunchroom, that they're able to get something to go and then eat it in the quad or eat it in the garden. Those things are important.
It is. And I think we intentionally focus on instead of being trustees earned, which we know trustees earned in the long run, however, we start at a level of trust.
Right.
And I think that's important for the students to know. So you're going to start at a level of trust with us. And then, yes, obviously, if we need to rein things in a bit, we can.
Right, of course.
But I think that's important for them to understand. They're going to be treated like adults. And with that comes adult decisions and consequences and everything else. But now is the time to learn those. You don't want to learn those adult consequences when you're over 18.
Exactly. In a safe space where you're going to get a second chance. Exactly.
Yep, absolutely.
But even being adults, which they all think of themselves as, I love watching them play during break. I love watching them play football, play spike ball. I mean, they are like a bunch of, giant kids.
I think for the business office, absolutely. And I think for the business office, having to replace sod every year or whatever else. But I think, honestly, to me, that shows a really healthy outdoor culture that we have with the kids. I love walking outside and seeing the sod completely worn out, but that means kids have been playing there.
Right, exactly.
Yes, it doesn't, to me, that looks pretty, even though we have dirt patches now in certain areas, but I think that really speaks to more and more over the last few years, our students, we've been intentional about getting them off their phones during break time and outside playing and interacting and talking. So it is fun to watch. Absolutely.
For sure. So thinking about all the different aspects of educating a teenager these days, a high school student, speak to some of the layers of support that our kids have.
So many. Obviously the teacher in the classroom. We've got full-time counselors on campus for the really serious social emotional issues that we may be able to talk through. But really just the intentional layers are, we've got the classroom teacher, we've got the homeroom teacher. And again, the homeroom teacher stays with that homeroom for all 4 years. So they really get to know those students. Right. We've got the grade chair, and the grade chair system is a huge bonus. Again, it's an extra parent on campus.
Right.
And they stay with that grade all the way through. Then obviously you have the various, you've got Mr. Lage as the Dean of Students, Assistant Head of Upper School. And I think the important thing there from a discipline standpoint that he manages incredibly well is the relationship piece. He does a great job of holding students accountable, but we also understand we're dealing with children, with students. And I think especially for the young men, our goal is, and we tend to live in a society where young men are being told to stand back, and I think I had a conversation with the boys yesterday. we want them to be able to be confident in who they are. We want them to be able to be confident in being young men in today's society. And yes, that means chivalry isn't dead. We hold the doors open for the young ladies, and we treat each other with respect. And I think it's important for them to have that confidence. And I think if we take that confidence away from the boys, especially. Then they struggle with identity. And I think with the girls, they really thrive in a safe environment. I'm fortunate to be a dad of daughters and son, and a son. So I see it from both perspectives. And sometimes I'm probably a little harder on my son than I would be on my girls, just because I have certain expectations of him. But I love that dynamic at Brookstone, is that we have so many different people that are pouring into these kids.
Totally.
And allowing for mistakes.
Right.
Exactly.
That's where the growth happens. For mistakes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because we can't expect them to be perfect all the time.
Absolutely.
They won't. We're not. So,
Correct.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges, or in what ways are we preparing them for the next chapter, for college, but for beyond? I mean, we got a lot of things facing us in...
I think it's probably the biggest challenge that every school faces.
Right.
I think one of the taglines we always use is we're trying to prepare students for jobs that haven't been, created yet. So part of it is really seems like an impossible task.
Right.
I think the biggest challenge we have is having them be able to navigate differences of opinion.
Right.
Because again, we live in a world where we try and encourage the students that you can argue, you can differ in opinion respectfully.
Right. Absolutely.
And I want conversation to increase. So I think being able to create an atmosphere where we can disagree, and we can still be respectful of each other.
Right.
Because if not, then that shuts down conversation. And the last thing we want is for no conversation to take place because you're scared of saying the wrong thing.
Right.
And I think that probably from a skill standpoint, not talking about academics obviously, but purely from a life skill standpoint, is probably one of the... If a student can leave Brookstone and be able to have a mature conversation with someone that they don't agree with, that would be a fantastic skill for them to have, I think.
I totally agree. We need more of that.
Absolutely. Academically, teachers are doing a great job. I think we're preparing the students for... I think the reports we get from college students that says, my English 101 class was so easy, or my econ class was so easy because I did a great job. The teachers did a great job at Brookstone preparing me. That's how we know anecdotally that it's working. And obviously we have some things to back that up, but I think academically we are right where we need to be. Obviously we'll always make tweaks and improvements. But socially, it's a bigger challenge socially, I think.
Yes.
In the world of TikTok, in the world of social media, in the world of outside influencers. So, yeah.
For sure. And so you have a daughter in college. You've been through this process as a parent. So speak to some of the college counseling and all that they do for us.
I think any independent school that's worth its salt needs to have a quality college counseling program. Because ultimately a parent's sending them through, in this case, Brookstone, to prepare them for college and to get into a college that's the right fit for them. And I think that's where we do a lot of communicating with parents. It's not necessarily the college that you want your child to go to or that your child thinks they may want to go to in 9th grade. They do a great job. Mr. Mack and Ms. Berry do a great job of exposing them to different colleges, different sizes, different locations. Yes, we have a great group of kids that go to Georgia and Auburn and Bama, go Dogs. But at the same time, we have so many students that are all over the country. And some of them have changed their mind just based on either visiting the colleges or having conversations with them. And we really do walk them through every part of the process. But at the same time, there's a level of accountability for the students too. There's certain things that Mr. Mack or Ms. Berry will say, listen, this is on you. You've got to make sure these deadlines are done or these scholarship offers or scholarship applications are submitted. And sometimes they miss those, you know, and that's part of life's experience, and we got to learn. And yes, we hold their hand as much as we need to hold their hand, but we don't hold their hand all the way through. And I think that's important.
Well, it's a good partnership to have as a parent, because you do know somebody else is helping to hold your child accountable.
Absolutely.
It's not just you. But yeah, it is such a blessing to have. I really cannot imagine having gone through this college process without the help of our counseling office.
Absolutely.
They're amazing.
And we had a great yesterday, actually, we had a coffee with the principal, and that was a college focus. So Mr. Robert Flournoy, who's graduate of the class of 97, came to speak to the parents about making college affordable. You know, and I think we had over 30 parents there, and so you can see it's a hot topic. And they did a great job of just Q&A time, you know, so I think it was a fantastic time for us to just learn about the process, depending on which age group. Ninth grade parents have different questions than 11th grade parents.
Yes.
But that was a great time.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So do you have more of those planned this spring, coffees with the
We'll
principal?
probably have one more in April. Don't know the topic yet. Usually what we'll do is they are very informal coffees, and it will have a specific topic that we're maybe going to focus on in addition to other Q&A time and really just a time for us to have some fellowship and talk. And they're not parent conference times. We don't do those there. But it really is a fun time for us to chat and for them to get to hear about things that are maybe happening. You know, the previous one we really did a deep dive into test scores and AP results and where our students have gone to college. They do a great job. The admissions, the college department does a great job of keeping that data.
Right.
You know, so for us to be able to share that with the parents and be transparent is fantastic. And we'll probably do one that focuses just on that because that was really helpful to them. I think it answers some questions that sometimes if you don't know, if you don't have the information, you start asking questions. And then when you look at it, you'll be like, oh, this is great information to have.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We'll probably next year start off with one that just focuses on that data as well.
Yeah. Because, it's helpful in every way as you're thinking through this process. And we do start early. Like you said, the freshmen, really even in eighth grade, really start thinking about college and how to prepare for it.
And what we want parents to know is it's a partnership, number one.
Yes.
That we don't want to come across as hiding. They are welcome to come look at data, to come visit classrooms.
Right.
Within reason. But at the same time, it's important for them to know they are welcome to know what we are doing.
Right,
and I think sometimes because we are doing it every day, we assume they know.
Right.
And so if there's things that we haven't shared, just ask. You know, I always encourage parents. If you have a question, ask about it. It's not that we're not trying to tell you. We just assume you know because we know and we're doing it every day. You know, so it just comes naturally a little bit.
Right. So speak to some of those things. What are some of your favorite things about Brookstone, like in general, and favorite electives in the upper school, things like that? You know, when you talk about not knowing things, I have the advisory games, for example, popping in on that assembly and getting those details and all that fun. Parents might not even really realize.
I don't think they do. And those are the things when you talk about the why Brookstone piece, those are the intangibles that you get to experience once you're here. And it's tough to kind of put them down on paper because they happen so often. But they're so meaningful. Advisory games, obviously, it really is a competition between homerooms. It's not grade specific, it's homeroom specific. And it gets really competitive. I don't know if it's the teachers or the students that are more competitive on this. We've actually got to check some teachers sometimes to make sure that the information we're getting is accurate. You know, Ms. Lumsden, I'll throw her name out there, super competitive. And to give you an idea, the teachers don't have more than 12 to 14 kids in their homeroom, right? So one of the competitions was whichever homeroom has the most kids to come watch the championship game of the basketball, get some points.
Yes.
So she's there, obviously, and she wanted to make sure that she was going to get credit for being there too. But then she also says, oh, and I brought 20 students with me. I said, you don't even have 20 students in your advisory, you know? So we have a good time. Ms. Waters' advisory won it because she had the most students there actually at the game. That put them over the edge.
Oh, there you go.
But those types of things are really, it's just fun. It's just fun time for the kids to have, and it gets the competitive juices flowing.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, gosh, yes. We are a competitive bunch.
Yes,
that is for sure.
Yes, we are. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so speak to some of the electives. What are some of the unique or interesting electives you think that we offer?
One of the most popular ones I think we added this year is the history of rock and roll.
Oh, yes.
So Mr. Griffin, second year teacher now, he came last year. That was a passion of his. And I think one of the benefits that we have, again, at Brookstone, but private schools in general, is that we can create and offer electives. If we have a teacher that's passionate about something, they can do it. It's kind of like going on the trips. You can offer a trip, and Brookstone allows us to do that.
Right.
And I think so. History of rock and roll, but then the science electives, marine biology, ornithology. You know, those are really popular courses. The marine bio trip, with Ms. Branham has been going on for years.
Right.
Forensics. So those digital photographies are huge. We have, I think, 4 sections of digital photo that gets taken. So, and again, talk about trust. That's one of those classes where we can send the students out and say, go take some photos and anywhere on campus really. And 99.9% of the time they do the right thing and they take great photos. But those are the electives I think just so many. And every year that changes. Next year there may be a teacher that we hire that's passionate about whatever it may be.
Right.
One of our new teachers this year is offering an elective next year called Women's History. So she's going to do a full elective on that in social studies,
that's awesome.
which is great. So it's just it changes every year, and it's based on the passion of the teacher.
So even though we've hit on this so often as we're talking, but just your why Brookstone, and I know that can be intermingled as a parent and as a faculty member. But I mean, your whole family's here with April here, and I mean, so what is your why What are your why Brookstones?
Sure. So many. So yes, you're right. My wife teaches in the second grade. Fantastic teacher.
Her room is my favorite lower school room. It is like walking into a spa.
Yeah.
I mean, she has.
I know every student in her class, and I say that in a positive way, because when we get home during the day, and that's when you know what being a passionate teacher is being about, because she's not able to switch off. So when we get home, we discuss every child and their quirks and the funny things that happened that day, and second graders that say the darndest things. It's hilarious. So I feel like I know her kids probably as well as I know my upper school kids. But I think the family piece is a huge part of that. So to me, I wouldn't be at a school if I didn't feel that it was the right fit for my family.
Right.
So I think that's probably the primary reason of my why Brookstone. The little things that I can have my kids anywhere on campus between, when I'm on campus and not have to worry about it.
Right.
Sharing a campus between, pre-K 12 is a huge part of it. The vocab parade this morning.
Yes.
And I mentioned this earlier, but it's nothing to do with upper school, but it's everything to do with upper school.
Right.
And I think those types of experiences are huge for a pre-K 12 campus.
Right.
Our upper school students get to see that they are, whether they want to be or not, they are an example to the younger ones.
Yes.
And that helps in conversations that we have with them.
Right.
Obviously we love Columbus. Her family is still in Columbus. The teachers, when you talk about a why Brookstone in general, though, it is the teachers, the faculty. We wouldn't be here without them.
Right. They
are why we have students in the classroom, and they do an absolutely fantastic job. I think as a teacher, what I think sometimes parents don't understand about a teacher is that parents need to look at the teacher as an adoptive parent of 40 to 50 to 60 kids.
Right.
And that's truly the role that they play, is that they play and they take every kid's struggles and frustrations and everything to heart. And it wears on them. So when they get, any kind of criticism, I've got to tell them, listen, it's okay. You're not doing a bad job. It's because you love that kid so much.
Right.
But they wear it on this, they wear it, on them because they want to make sure they do a good job. And I think that really speaks to the passion that these teachers have across the board at Brookstone, is that they love every single kid, and they are attempting to do what they feel is best for that child in the moment, which is always tough, as well.
Yeah.
But
they do love our kids.
They do,
and the relationships don't end when they graduate.
Correct.
Correct. I had one science teacher who retired last year, but like my child that was a biology major would constantly reach out to him for advice, suggestions, or clarification, and that he would take the time out to still help him. I mean,
and even when teachers leave, that and
right.
I mean, I still get texts chastising me from Jim East. Okay. Daily. But Eva, my graduate now, my daughter, I think Angela Jones in the math department probably got her through a math 101 class in college. So those types of relationships, you're right, they don't end.
They don't.
And we hear stories of that all the time where teachers are getting calls from graduates to help them, meet them for coffee and help them with work or whatever it may be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, saw one who had been out for a while and was back getting help with an essay for graduate school. Yeah. And it just, I'm so grateful that they feel so comfortable to continue to come back. And I mean, it's really a blessing.
It is.
So, and so your little ones, I'm sure watching Eva go through, I mean, did they have seniors in the classroom and things like this?
They did. Obviously, during the COVID years, that was put on hold for a bit. But it's back in full swing. It's fantastic to see how much it means to the seniors as well. I know it means a lot to the little ones because they're always looking up to the big kids. But the seniors take a lot out of it too.
Yeah.
They connect with those kids. They see that they are examples that they are setting for the young students, and I think they really take that to heart. And it's a growth moment for them too. But yeah, that's a great program. Absolutely fantastic program.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up, endless opportunities. That's one thing
Sure.
I wanted to touch on because you talked about the trips. You took a trip last year to South Africa. How was that?
Fantastic. So I've tried to take one at least every 2 years. I think one of the things that also drew me to Brookstone was the fact that we value trips. We value the outdoor classroom experience. I think kids learn as much, if not more, outside the classroom as they do inside. And so we took, I think, 17 kids to South Africa.
That's a crew.
It is a crew, but I never wanted bigger than that because you want it to be an intimate experience and really get to experience it. My brother-in-law has a hunting and safari company there, so he and I can tailor the trip based on what we want the students to. It's not just a traditional tourist trip.
Right.
So we have some adventure stuff. We have some, we go visit an orphanage, which really, when you talk to the students, that part of the trip, it used to be my mom's school. She's retired. So we used to go to my mom's school. She taught at a school for underprivileged kids. And we used to spend a day with them and do some work with them. And whether it's that or the orphanage that we visited this time, when you talk to the students, that's the most impactful part of the trip. Because you get to see students that have absolutely nothing, or kids that have absolutely nothing, that live in extreme poverty, at least what we would consider extreme poverty, but are happy. So it's a life lesson for our kids that the material things that we take for granted in the US really are not needed for happiness. The kids are running in the streets, playing rugby with a brick, and they just biggest smile on their face. So that part's great. Obviously, we do the shark cage diving, bungee jumping.
Obviously, of course,
you can't not do that. But
bungee
jumping is fantastic.
The pictures I saw.
Well, deal for the chaperones is to be a chaperone, you have to do the bungee jump.
No.
So,
I'm sorry, I will miss that.
Kathy
trip.
Jones and Rusty Davis. Kathy said a lot of prayers on the way on the bridge, on the way to the bridge. That was funny watching.
Yeah, that was high.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. It's 2.5 football fields. 200. It's the highest bridge bungee in the world. So it's great.
My word.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Word. Have you done it multiple times?
Yes. Yeah. I love it. I love doing that. Eva did it too. I love doing it. But I think it's not just that. I think it's obviously the trips we do locally, field trips so often in town.
Right.
Professional development opportunities. When we talk about endless opportunities, it's not just for the students.
Right.
It's for the parents too, in this case, with Blanchard Leadership, but with professional development for the faculty. If there's things that they want to have growth in, we allow them to do that.
Right. Right.
Little things. I got a note from a teacher this week just saying, thank you for covering my class. I said, listen, you don't have to say thank you. That's kind of what we do. She goes, no, it's not what you do. It's not what you do in public school. And that is unfortunately the reality is that students do not all get to experience this.
Right.
Our students are so fortunate.
Right.
And our teachers know that they are fortunate to be here as well.
Right.
And you can see it. People are happy.
People are happy.
Yeah.
I know people comment every time they visit campus.
Correct.
That the kids are smiling.
Yeah.
The teachers say hello to one another and hello to the guests. We take it for granted because we see it every day.
And it's not every day. I mean, we understand that people get upset and people make mistakes and everything else. But, I think the overwhelming majority of the time, it is really just a happy place to be.
It really is.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for visiting with us.
Anytime.
I think we're going to just have to have you come back another time.
Anytime. I'm glad to break in the new studio.
I know. Me too. So, perfect guest. So,
Fantastic.
thank you so much.
I appreciate it.